Prendik's changing gaze culminates in retreat, ending in utter exceptionalism and, in the face of experiences that contradict it, breakdown. It begins with that full and sudden flip that starts in chapter 17. After 6 weeks pass, about which Prendik reveals almost nothing, he has adopted Moreau's idealized view of man and actively suppresses the fact that the latter's words criticizing the beast folk inadvertently describe people perfectly. He writes, "I had lost every feeling but dislike and abhorrence of these infamous experiments of Moreau's. My one idea was to get away from these horrible caricatures of my Maker's image, back to the sweet and wholesome intercourse of men. My fellow creatures, from whom I was thus separated, began to assume idyllic virtue and beauty in my memory." Weird. I would think after his insights at the end of chapter 16 that he'd go straight back to the lab and insist that the Puma Woman be freed. But he doesn't. And after 6 more weeks of listening to her scream, he's untouched by emotion, as he says, and coming up with all this hate speech. He's also avoiding Montgomery like the plague, and no wonder. The assistant is all too evidently a person rather than a paragon of virtue and beauty. Prendik never found his way into a gaze that wasn't his own, which is why he failed to help the leopard man in time. As for the Puma Woman, he fails to help her at all, completely missing her presence in the situation, despite it being his primary sensory experience throughout most of the first half of the book. The reason why is twisted up in that strange 6 weeks of silence between 2 chapters, and what can only be interpreted not merely as happening to miss her, but refusing to look. The power in this portion of story arises, as I see it, from forcing the reader, you and me, to look instead, to challenge the man-beast divide in precisely those places we cling to it. It's laid upon us to make the connection that Prendik could not.